on the front page of the Star. I see the picture at the front of the pictures on all the, actually what, the three, the Star, the Daily Nation and Taifaleo have students Form 1s reporting to school. I will leave it at that, but now invite my panelists to weigh in on these issues. We'll start with the IEBC selection panel. And the question the Daily Nation is asking, is it an own goal? Was it an own goal by Raila? Is he now lying in a bed of his own making? Professor Naituli.
You know, one of our biggest weaknesses as a country is to look at the symptoms, but not the disease. The IMBC problem has actually nothing to do with how they recruit these people, because we have done that all the time. We just recruit according to who we think is going to waive us when it really matters. IMBC has a fundamental problem. The problem is both structural and value-based. Structural in the sense that as long as IMBC remain as structured, it will have problems. They will never even agree on how to recruit. Now, value-based, because as we read from the last election, there was money being offered to these people because there is no values. There is no integrity in the people that they choose. So, about scoring his own goal, I wouldn't think so. Because when, during the handshake regime, Raila would have fixed this thing for posterity. Okay. He didn't do that. He would have, what he's proposing now is actually what he should have done, because for me...
Okay, Prof, I don't want us to get into devolving elections quite yet, but Javas, was it an own goal? Kimani Ichung'wah has consistently made the point or the case as far back as when they were in Narok, and he's consistently said that this law, the only changes they made is as far as the four nominated from the Parliamentary Service Commission, but he says this is a law that was passed under the previous administration. Own goal?
Well, first it is the adage that whoever wants to dig a well must go inside himself. Now, as a matter of fact, we know that the tragedy in this country is that most politicians, and including parliamentarians, always craft laws intending it most of the time to be used against their enemies and for their own benefit. Which means then that the greater good is not always the primary face of some of these important pieces of legislation that are tied to elections especially. And for Raila Odinga, for instance, in matters to do with the selection panel for the IEBC, it seems that there was a cockeyed idea during the handshake tenure that maybe perhaps it would have worked in their interest. I remember the furore that was raised at the Bomas during the BBI, one of the BBI launch reports. And then DP, now President William Ruto, asked that if at all the issue of particular players or teams selecting the referee was something that was social justice in the circumstances. And I remember the crowd roaring, yes, it is. And now I can see that from Raila Odinga's corner, there is some disgruntlement and displeasure. I think this is a very important lesson for us, that even for this Kenya Kwanza regime, there should be no fashioning of electoral laws or amendments to the same with a view to benefit, not knowing that possibly it will benefit the opponent. And so I think in this case, well, like it was perhaps in the case of Socrates and even Plato in their time, perhaps I would want to say that when you're given poison and it's not that you had intended to give somebody else, in that cup perhaps you find yourself consuming that poison. And that's what Raila Odinga is doing presently.
Okay, I'm going to borrow from Misemoya Javas. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. What do you think, James?
Absolutely. But what all these guys are trying to avoid is answer the question you asked. Own goal or not. You know, this country has very serious people, and they might come here and go around and round in circles and not answer the question. The question is this. Did he score his own goal? Yes. I know that this is not the first time. It's the second time. The Isaac Hassan Commission was known majorly to be favorable to Raila Odinga. In 2016, the end of 2016, he worked very hard to remove it and brought this commission headed by Wafula Chebukati. And then Wafula Chebukati went to the election in 2017, and the election was nullified. And the blame was put squarely at his door, okay? Mm-hmm. What would a handshake partner like Raila Odinga have done? He would have had Wafula Chebukati removed. He didn't, okay? Instead, he decided to do some ukarabati by introducing some laws to the IEBC schedule to increase the number of what he thought was political participation by giving the Parliamentary Service Commission more slots in the selection panel for the IEBC. Of course, with disastrous consequences, once again. They have said many times, not anyone, not even the devil knows the state of mind of a human being. And I can tell you for sure, as my friend now said here, even the Kenya Kwanza administration should not be very content that probably it has put in place commissioners that it thinks will do by them good in 2027. What every player in this particular process should do is to strive to fix the problems at the IEBC. And probably the constitution, the judgment of the Supreme Court in 2022 is a good place to start, by dealing with some of those big questions, which are the reason why every time somebody gets to believe that the IEBC does not do a good job. For instance, okay, Article 138, sub-Article 3C, as read with Article 138(10) of the Constitution, who should verify, tally, and announce results, okay? Now, this Parliament has good opportunity to clarify what the court said, and what does the commission in respect to that particular provision mean, okay? I remember in 2016, Maraga, Justice Maraga, now Chief Justice Emeritus, as chairman of the Judiciary Committee on Election, suggested that, you know, when we go to elections, 14 days is a very short time within which to resolve a serious, significant presidential election contest of that nature. Can we make it 30 days? Because, you know, that is the only way. If the Supreme Court has good opportunity to inquire into exactly what happened, with parties having enough time to deal with the question, probably at the end of the process somebody might find out something about what happened. So I think, own goal, yes. Is he about to score an own goal again? Probably yes, because he doesn't seem to be changing.
All right, so we'll get into that, whether the fix is actually devolving the electoral process, or again, as James is saying, it's another own goal. But Mheshimiwa, karibu sana. Thank you. And do you think that Kenya Kwanza can learn a lesson or two from said own goal as far as this legislation on recruitment of IEBC commissioners is concerned?
Thank you. I think the Kenya Kwanza, and if you remember, we were very committed from the first during these processes of election last year, when we said, even if it is Oburu Odinga who is going to be the chairman of IEBC, we don't care. We are ready to go to the election and face people. We don't care about how IEBC is constituted, because we know there is infrastructural element of election process, which is very, very watertight, which was open to the public and to the international community, that wherever you are, even if you're in Cook Island, you can go to the public portal, get your calculator, and tally the results which are uploaded from the polling station. So the issue is not about the composition of commissioners. The issue is about someone who has refused to accept the results of elections from 1992 up to now. That is more than 40 years. And I think it's high time for Raila Odinga to change tacts, because Kenya has changed. There is a complete paradigm shift. This is not the Kenya of 1992. This is not the Kenya of 2002 or 2007. It's a different nation. It's not about who is going to be commissioner of IEBC. We in Kenya Kwanza, we don't mind. We have very competent Kenyans who can be chairmen, And by the way, we should recommend Maraga for the job he did as a chairman of IBC. He did an extremely
Maraga
awesome
or
job.
Wafula Chebukati?
Not Maraga. My friend
Chebukati.
He did an awesome job. He saved this nation. So we in Kenya Kwanza, we are not concerned about the composition of commissioners. We are very competent Kenyans who can be commissioners, who can be chairman. The issue is, will Raila Odinga ever in his lifetime accept the results of the elections?
All right. Prof, I saw you doing this.
Yes, because,
but before I continue that conversation, let's look at just one more thing from the dailies, right? And that is the question on the front page of the Taifa Leo, now that we've tackled that one, partly on the front page of the Daily Nation. Taifa Leo asks, ni kisasi au ushuru? Ruto ameshambulia familia ya mtangulizi wake akidai ndiye anayehifadhi upinzani ili aendelee kuhepa ushuru siku chache baada ya kumpokonya rais mstaafu walinzi, hatua inayofufua picha ya ukandamizaji wa upinzani katika tawala zilizopita. Kimani Ichung'wah has asked Treasury to submit a report on applications for tax waivers from 2018. So, ni kisasi au ushuru, Prof?
I think the only mistake Ruto is making there is speaking too much, which he doesn't have to. You see, if you are collecting taxes, there is an agency for collecting taxes. They need to bail these fellows. And I don't think it's kisas, because his problem is talking about it. In his own, allowing those assigned responsibility to collect taxes to go ahead. If you listened to what went on in the construction of West Njiara, then you realize that this country has been robbed every year by the powerful and the mighty. If you listen to that, or even you follow the trend of the corruption in this country, you know that who runs corruption in Kenya is the government. Now, who is the government? The senior people in the government. They are the one who request those tax waivers from themselves. Because, I mean, we know for a fact that there was a waiver on some man of bank for 350 million issued by your own minister. You know, there is something we call abuse of office, yeah? When you use your office to confer benefit to yourself, and I think some of those should be able to be reversed. So what I'm saying is the Kenya Kwanza government is doing, they are talking like Mama Ngina told them, do your job. If you have taxes, you know how to go and get them. But stop talking so that you look like you are working when you are actually not working. But what they are doing, in my opinion, if they continue politicizing like that, then it will be political and it will backfire on them. What they need is simply collect the taxes. Stop talking about it. Get those who have not been paying, and there are many who have not been paying. And you have to see that also you need fairness in that process. You need to be fair. They have removed a huge amount of tax-related cases from courts without allowing the court process to conclude, so that we know where the facts are. They have not, at the same time, requested, I'm talking about the Kenya Kwanza government, the Director of Public Prosecution to resign over the same, because if he took those tax-related matter to court on the persuasion of the previous government, then he violated the law, because the Constitution says he works without taking directive from anyone else. If he took without standing those files properly, then he is incompetent, which is one of the grounds under Article 158 for removal from office. So what we are seeing here is that be fair in collecting these taxes, be even. Because if you are going to remove those cases, then you have no more authority to collect also from those fellows who have been robbing the country.
All right, so we need to take a break, but when we come back, I'll pose this same question to my panelists, and then we'll delve into the proposed devolution of elections. Swali ni kisasi au ushuru? See you on the other side of this break.
Take it slow, baraka zake ukuja tu pole pole. Huyo aliyetenda jana leo atatenda zaidi. Huyo aliyetenda jana leo atatenda zaidi. Atatenda zaidi. Zidi kumwamini zaidi. Atatenda zaidi. Zidi kumwamini zaidi.
To get Zaidi by Jonah Le Parman, dial star 812 star 801 hash. Skiza, Na Nation.
February is the month of love, and this February we've got an amazing activity for all the singles who are ready to mingle. It's going to be an afternoon full of good vibes and awesome activities from speed dating, sip and paint, charades, karaoke, and so much more. Get to enjoy live music from Hard the Band. Catch the Season 3 Episode 1 live recording of the Joyrides podcast. Mark your calendars for February 18th right here at Anzana Gardens from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. Get your tickets on Kenya Buzz today. That's www.kenyabuzz.com. Tickets go for 2,000 bob for individual tickets. Lakini kama uko na ambogi of 5 people nashikana, and your only part is 7,500. XOXO, get ready to mingle.
She's my lover, she's my lover.
Any manager arriving at a club is expected to be positive, say the right things, set the tone, and hope things go well from there. Which is pretty much how Sean Dyche started his tenure as Everton manager, sitting down for an interview with the club's in-house TV channel. The notion that Manchester City buying Erling Haaland has helped Arsenal's Premier League title bid might seem a little off base at first glance.
Grow your biashara by accessing loans, investment options, convenient banking, network opportunities, and so much more. Njoo tukujenge. Visit any one of our 93 branches countrywide. Family Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
I'm Julian Sambokwe,
Oliver Matenge,
Matthew Mbiti,
Nick Nyamori, Migok,
James Oluoch.
I'll be attending Man Cave.
I'll be attending Man Cave.
And I'll be attending Man Cave.
And I'll be attending the Man Cave on the 25th of February at the Lake House, Tigoni. Join us.
See you then.
See you then.
And hope to see you there.
Will you?
Claiming your assets is easy. Simply visit UFAA website www.ufaa.go.ke or dial star 361 hash or visit Huduma Center near you.
Scenic imagery there coming out of Lake Bogoria. My director Jackson Ndirangu preempted my question. I was about to ask him, where is that? It looks so beautiful. Just a reminder of our topic of conversation. We are asking, devolving elections, game changer or fool's errand? That's my question. The Daily Nation asked this question, Raila's own goal on IEBC. And the Taifa Leo asked this one, Kisasi au ushuru? Professor Gitile Naituli had occasion to respond to this one. Javas, ni kisasi au ushuru?
Well, first I recall that when DP William Ruto, as he then was campaigning, he said that given a chance to lead this country, he will ride on the wave of the rule of law. I want to pleasantly imagine that this administration of President William Ruto is going to ride on the rule of law. If it's a question of interrogating whether all the tax waivers were done in the interest and especially under the rule of law, no conflicting of interest, and in fact that it was reasonable to give those waivers, and especially at all, if at all, those companies associated with the waivers are associated with the former president, then it may be in bad taste. And so I think on the basis of the Access to Information Act as a right, it is important for this information to be sought from Treasury, as Leader of Majority Chungwa has done. I think it's all right. And once this has been established, then to determine whether it was in the, in good measure and sense to grant these waivers. But again, let's ask ourselves, were all the waivers just granted to companies associated with the former president? If such were the case, or will be determined as the case, then I think it will be in very bad taste. To possibly borrow a very small leaf from what Professor Naituli indicated, it's a matter of fact that the tradition seems to hold in this country that those who access public office most of the time use it as a very convenient platform for self-benefit and pursuit or accessing riches. In fact, it is a no-brainer that in this country, most of the time, if you want to become rich very fast, at a rocket speed, join politics and especially join government. And that is why people fight tooth and nail. Some even kill to get into political office, especially government. But I want to hope then that it is not matters witch hunting. Additionally, the infusion of politics is what is bringing the angle of witch hunting. Now, as a matter of fact, government is supposed to do its work. Let it do it. It must not be that those who committed or who may have committed particular offenses or faults under the umbrella of the law, then if at all they are touched, then it is deemed to be witch hunt. And so, agreeing perhaps to a narrow extent or small extent with the former First Lady Mama Ngina, that if at all it can be established that she or they have not paid taxes to a certain period, then let the appropriate measures of law be taken. And for those who are in power today, they should remember that if at all it is a question of witch hunting, it may be a very bad tradition or precedent being set. But if it's a question of correcting the ills, then let it be known that whoever is in power will have a time where somebody else will occupy those seats and they may be investigated. And so to see how matters tax can be raised, as the president has indicated that everybody must pay tax, yes, everybody must pay tax. Borrows, yes, the benefit at how the government is doing its approaches, but I want to hope it's not just the politics of witch hunting and maybe the bad taste in the mouth that has remained, especially after the ills of the the handshake government.
All right, James, like Prof and like Javas, pia mimi ni machone, ni venye nimeva contact lens. So what lenses are you looking at these developments using? And I ask that because Taifa Leo is asking the question in context of the, quote, scaling down of former President Uhuru Kenyatta's security detail. And also, something Mama Ngina raised is, why are they dragging the Kenyatta family name through the mud? If indeed this is about taxes, why not let Kiare pursue it and not shout about it from the pulpits as they are currently doing?
Your own Daily Nation has just reported that we have crossed the 9 trillion mark in terms of public debt. And I think...
What page is that?
I think...
Is it today's Daily?
Yes, I've seen it somewhere that we have...
Oh, yes, it is on the front page.
Yes, yes.
Kenya's public debt crossed the 9 trillion mark for the first time last December.
Absolutely. And the Kenya Kwanza government is definitely borrowing to sustain budget, okay? Which means that we are in dire straits in terms of collection of revenue. There is absolutely no doubt that we need these taxes. And that there is absolutely no doubt that the responsibility to collect taxes lies with an institution that, unless it has changed, that is called KRA, the Kenya Revenue Authority. In my view, Kimani Ichung'wah, William Ruto, President, do not collect taxes. And as my erstwhile professor colleague here said, it is extremely important for this administration to do this politics right. Because if it doesn't, then it will fail, okay? It might even lose opportunities where it could have actually collected taxes. Because as it is going, it looks like someone is overreading Robert Greene's 48 laws of power, and they are trying to suggest to this administration that, I mean, smoke out all your real enemies and perceived ones by whatever means, including by attacking them on taxes. I think Mama Ngina's advice, especially coming from that age and having seen many governments, is extremely, extremely timely. This government seems to really value PR, okay? When a certain agency of government or a cabinet secretary is intending to do something, he will tell us about it 3 months in advance. That is not how government is run. I think these guys might require to borrow a leaf from Kibaki's administration. People who sat down and created fantastic policy and implemented it quietly without shouting. And the country could see, because the results were there, that these policies meant something. Having said that, I'll quickly advise my friends in this government, and I have a lot of them, that 5 years, even if you extended it to 10 years, is a very short time. In fact, I've seen Kimani Ichung'wah asking for a chronology of debt, of tax reliefs that have been granted to certain individuals for 5 years. Why start 5 years? Why not 10 years, for instance? Okay? Because who said this problem started 5 years ago? It might as well be that you want to relate it to the handshake, but in actual fact, these things were happening right from 2013. Okay? So we may need to make a choice. Do we want to go back there, or do we want to go forward and collect taxes? But collecting taxes we must, only that we must do it properly in accordance with the Constitution and the law. And we don't have to target anyone. Okay. Just collect taxes from everyone, and you will quickly realize that probably this particular sword cuts both sides. It might cut people in government and cut people outside of government. But one thing I must say, and I agree with the professor here, is this office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. We have seen shortly after coming into office, this administration has overseen a very quick, sporadic, extremely targeted withdrawal of very serious cases, including tax-related cases from the courts. And the Constitution provides that the Director of Public Prosecutions is an independent public officer who is not subject to direction by anybody. And so I get this idea that what it looks to me is that the Director of Public Prosecutions was unduly influenced by the previous administration to start tax cases against certain people, which is totally against the Constitution. And he is then again being unduly influenced now to remove those cases from court or terminate them, which is also unconstitutional. And I think I belong to that school of thought that the current Director of Public Prosecution has served his purpose and should be released from the bondage he's in, because he has absolutely no sense of independence, which is something that is expected from a position such as his. No one should direct the Director of Public Prosecutions on who to prosecute and how to terminate cases. Okay? So the one thing that we should be very careful about is not to be in a hurry to say, of course, don't go for these people if they have not paid taxes. But the other thing that we should caution about is don't make it look political, because if you do, then you are setting, as my friend said, a very bad precedent. It will come to haunt us.
Okay, Mhesh, two things have stood out for me. Java said, if you want to become rich in this country, become a politician or join government. And James says, hii ni serikali ya PR.
I want to disabuse the notion which my colleagues here are trying to put across to the nation. One, the Kenya Kwanza government or the president or even any senior government official, none is picking the call to call the prosecutor, the director of
public
prosecution. None. It is, we need to remember where we have come from just a few months ago. The guy called Kinoti the director of criminal investigations, is a fellow who, with other, the then regime, politicized prosecution and criminal investigations. It was a complete witch hunt. You remember we had Kamata Fridays. Where did they go? So it is not about the director of public prosecution, because these cases were brought to the director of public prosecution by the DCI. DCI, which did a very short job, very short investigations. If you remember, even before he could do any investigations, he had to hold a press conference, have a very, show, a very big show about how he's going to prosecute some people with no evidence. Then it results now to the investigations. So that now he forwarded this file to the director of public prosecution. So all these cases were politically instigated by the previous regime. That's why they cannot start any test of law in any court of law. So it is important for me to mention that. And if you remember, if there is a first guy who was requested to resign by the president, it's Kinoti, because he did completely short the job. Number two, about taxes. This country need good schools, roads, hospitals, security, defense. All these things must be financed by the people of the Republic of Kenya. If you look at the nations which have developed, if you go to a nation like Israel, the people of Israel pay 50% of their income as taxes, which, as for us here, we pay that percent as pay as you want.
You pay 60%.
Let me make my point, Prof. I was not ejecting when you guys were talking, and I was almost asking Olive to allow me to not to allow you to continue with the kind of. So what I'm trying to say is that every Kenyan must pay tax. The very down at the bottom of the pyramid and at the top of the pyramid. We have millions of Kenyans who don't pay tax. For instance, we have EPZA, companies which have been operating in this country for many years. They are 10 years tax waiver, and even after 10 years tax waiver, they are still not paying taxes. And they are not employing our reparers, in a substantial amount of money at the end of every month. Why should we continue like that? Who has been giving these companies the leeway not to pay taxes? When the leeway is only 10 years, and after 10 years, you now start paying taxes. The Kenya Kwanza government is committed to rebuild this nation at all fronts, or in all regions, and for us to be able to do that, Uhuru Kenyatta must pay tax. Raila Odinga and his companies must pay tax. Myself, Roko, must pay tax. Everybody. How many butcheries do we have in the Republic of Kenya? Do they pay tax? The answer is no. How many businesses do we have in every market around, in a town, in different towns in the Republic of Kenya? KRA does not have a proper system of collecting taxes. We have to put proper taxes of collecting taxes, and of course we have probably saying we pay about 60%. 60% probably, yes, I don't know. You need to show me that kind of arithmetic. But imagine we have been taxing the same product from the time we started this nation in 1963 up to now. You tax water, you tax beer, you tax the common things. You tax cigarette, you tax juices. We never go. KRA has refused completely to think out of the box or to think away from the box, so that we can be able to raise enough resources to rebuild this nation. Okay. This nation, we have to rebuild ourselves by our own hands, by our own resources. Okay. This business of borrowing money from China and other nations, we have to stop it. And I know the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency William Ruto, is in the process of doing that.
All right,
yes, I just want to
Prof, All right, you want to
very
respond
quick,
briefly so that we can settle in for the conversation. Let me even pull my chair.
Yes, on this issue about withdrawal of cases, yeah? I think the country needs to handle this matter with some seriousness, because we have not handled it with the seriousness. The Constitution is hived the DPP's office from the Attorney General's office. Then he put protections on the person of the DPP to shield that person from political pressure or any other pressure. Now, what Mheshimiwa is telling us here is the DPP actually succumbed to pressure, either from Kinoti, as he calls him, or from the president. That is violation of his oath of office, and therefore making that office weaker. So the fact, I don't understand why the Kenyans are not even in the streets demanding this person leave office, because if it is true, because all those cases were taken to court by him, not any other DPP, because if it's someone else, then he can come and say this person was influenced, but the same person is the one who took them there. The DCI has no power under the law to take any case to court.
Who corrects
so,
the evidence? Who corrects the evidence?
Who
corrects the evidence?
I'll opine like this, that of course I understand what Mheshimiwa is saying, and is playing his duty as a member of parliament and a politician in Kenya Kwanza to defend his party, which is all right. What we are discussing, what we are talking about, is that the criminal justice system and the justice system is very critical and very important when it comes to the stability of the country, when it comes to earning the confidence of investors, whether those investors are local or even foreign. Today, when you're talking about development, as you cited, Israel, if we want to attract direct foreign investment, investors will first of all look at the justice system of a country. Now, the issue here, the argument on the table regarding that matter of the withdrawal of cases is that, and you remember that the courts have even settled this matter on the decision to prosecute. That decision rests squarely on the shoulders of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And as a matter of fact, what is making any reasonable person cringe is that the DPP himself has indicated, as well, and acquiescing with various politicians, that some of those cases were politically instigated. Now, as a matter of fact, before the DPP approached the courts, he was satisfied by the evidence that had been brought to him after investigations by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. He was satisfied. And when I talk about being satisfied, I want to imagine that he was reasonable in his acceptance of that evidence, that it can secure a conviction. And then he went to the courts. And then a short while later, when there's transition, he says that, and he agrees that possibly these cases were politically instigated, motivated, and that actually now he is not willing to prosecute, entering the nolle prosequi. Then no, it's all right. As a matter of fact, the question is this. There was wisdom in having independent officers enshrined in the Constitution. That wisdom, that reason must remain reasonable, and that wisdom is what Kenyans wanted. It is unsustainable that we can get to have persons that have got the security of tenure, occupying offices, paid by the exchequer, and then playing games of musical chairs for certain interests. The argument today is that nearly every Kenyan is dissatisfied with the character of the DPP with respect to how these cases were handled at the tail end of the Uhuru Kenyatta administration. And Kenyans are inquiring whether the withdrawal of these cases is satisfactory and proper and meets actually the scales of justice. And if at all it meets the scales of justice that they were politically instigated, the problem then is in the person of the DPP, who should then vacate that office, because then he did not serve the interests of Kenyans. And remember that when you look at the establishment of the office of the DPP as an independent institution in the Constitution, is that it must not be available for direction from any person whatsoever, to be directed or guided, and that must serve the public interest public interest, not political interest,
Okay.
then in this case the question arises, which public interest was the DPP serving?
All right. Mahesh, I'll come to you for the last word. But first, James, when the DPP sat down with my colleague in the profession, Sophia Wanuna, he said he trusted the DCI, they're operating on good faith. That
That's incompetence.
Olive, right?
Yes, James.
Olive, I'm almost jumping out of this seat. I'm sorry, I didn't listen to that. I didn't watch that interview.
That is incredible.
But that is what somebody called Jeremy Bentham would have called nonsense upon stilts. Nonsense on high heels. The DPP cannot tell us anything like that. It is the responsibility of the Director of Public Prosecutions to sit down and look through the charges brought before him and determine two things. One, do the charges before him disclose an offense? Okay? Then number two, is the evidentiary test. Is the evidence gathered by the evidence gathering and hunting institutions like ESCC and the DCI sufficient to convince him that this is an offense he should bring before the magistrates and judges of this country for a case of a criminal nature to proceed. And he therefore cannot leave that particular decision to anybody else, either in good faith or in bad faith or in whichever other faith, you know.
Okay.
It is unacceptable. But this is what we need to say. And I'm saying this with tremendous respect with my colleague, Mheshimiwa, who is here. I want to request His Excellency, the President William Ruto, to avoid being overdriven by Kenya Kwanza motivated politics. Okay? He now is the head of state of the Republic.
Yeah.
He's the president of those people who elected him, those who didn't. He's the president of one Raila Odinga, former President Kenyatta, and so on and so forth. Kenya Kwanza people, anytime they speak about some of these things, you will notice they will end up by saying, but we know His Excellency the President. To get that validation about some of these things that we are talking about, the President needs to sit in status and keep quiet a bit, you know, and look at some of these things clearly, and ask some of these ministers to come and tell him what this is about, and tell them that for the sake of this nation, we are going to run a country on the basis of the Constitution and the law. Even Jomo Kenyatta, when he became Prime Minister and later President in the early years of independence, decided to do not to do certain things against his predecessors, the colonialists. Because sometimes that is how a nation is built, okay? A nation is built incrementally. And sometimes you don't have to rubbish everything your predecessors have done. But at the same time, you may not necessarily condone everything that they have done, but you don't have to do it that way, okay? You don't have to sit in barazas saying, speaking about matters of policy haphazardly without giving due consideration to what these things mean. The institution of the DPP is an important institution that should give confidence to Kenyans that whenever something infringes the law, they expect that the proper process will follow and then we'll get a good result. Okay? But most importantly, on matters governance, okay? On matters governance, I think His Excellency the President needs, other than this seminar he took his cabinet to some place in Fairmont, needs to sit all these guys in corporate governance classes to tell them that it's not just about being seen to be done, to be doing something. It is also about, are you doing it correctly? Are you achieving anything? Don't change anything that is already working. That's the rule. Don't change something because you are now new in the office, now you have to change everything. Believe me, there is a bureaucracy out there called the civil service. And some of those people have worked here for a long time. They might not be able to argue against a CES who is totally ignorant about what is supposed to be done, but believe me, they will insubordinate him. And so, at the end of the day, His Excellency will fail because he has listened too much to political voices as opposed to good reason.
Okay.
And so I'm asking him to tell people that the era of insulting Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga is now over. Kenyans are expecting delivery of service.
All right.
Let's go out there and deliver services.
All right. Msemo of the day for me was nonsense on high heels. Well, you are about to jump out of your seat. Mahesh looks like he's about to jump out of his skin. Mahesh, your response.
Olive, there's no witch hunt. The former Director of Criminal Investigations, Kinoti, did a very useless job where he weaponized the investigations. Also, the then president weaponized the justice administrative system of this country, targeting people who seem to be his opponent or who seem to be opposing BBI and handshake. And that is where things went wrong as far as the cases which were forwarded to our courts. And that's why they cannot withstand any trial, because they don't have any merit under the law. The issues of taxes, it is true. What Kimani Ichung'wah, my colleague in Parliament, and Myrinda of majority in Parliament has done, it is known that companies, serious companies, making a lot of money, have not been paying taxes. It's high time for everybody to carry his cross, whether you are senior or not. Number 3, when you are given a job, a constitutional job, we have commissions, constitutional commissions in the Republic of Kenya, and you are given a job in a commission, you should hold that office with dignity, decorum, you know. You hold yourself with highest, very high, impeccable standards, and serve the people of the Republic of Kenya.
Okay.
What we are doing is, any public officer who has a constitutional office and is not performing his duties as it's supposed to be, will be impeaching so many of them in Parliament. We did that with the 4 commissioners, and we are lining up several others who are not performing their duties as it is expected by the Constitution. Yeah?
Okay.
Yes.
I really
the last one, Orif, is that we have also to remember, and I have to remind the Prof, that the President of the Republic of Kenya is a PhD holder. He's a guy who is very well educated. When he speaks, he knows what he's saying. When he's addressing issues, whether it is the issues of taxes, whether it is the issues to do with what at the moment Raila is trying to reincarnate himself in another form of, I don't know, they are calling it movement of defense of democracy.
Yes.
The president is always at the top of issues. And let me say this, we have a president who has a very firm grip of the government.
Olive,
so
Olive,
it is
all right,
just one point.
All right.
On a
last submissions on this so that we move along. James?
What does Mheshimiwa here have against butchers? I do not know.
Against?
Butchers.
Let
me tell you. Let me tell you, and I'm explaining this point.
All right.
Yes. Taxes for businesses at the very basic level is a function of profit. It's not just about revenue. It's not the fact that you have a butchery that requires you to pay tax. There is a procedure for evaluating yourself and submitting returns on taxes. And if government believes that there are people out there who are not paying taxes, I think they are going to do just more than just speak about it. Because I can tell you, because I have a lot of experience with...
It's very clever. He has thrown him to taxes
away
from a weak point within drawing cases.
Yes.
And he has fallen
yes, let me finish it. Let me finish it. This is what I'll tell you. By the time the Kenya Kwanza administration is done constituting sufficient resources to go after the so-called companies they're talking about, they will not have enough time to look at the other people who are supposed to pay taxes. Believe me, you. So I think that's why I told you this is a question of policy. Okay. All right? Sit down, Your Excellency William Ruto. Stop listening to some of these people who have to earn their next seat in Parliament and do what? Run government.
Okay. Javas, James ametafutia wewe na Professor kazi akisema watu wapelekwe corporate governance training.
Well, first let me say that Mheshimiwa, of course, is doing his job and is trying to position himself as a court poet in this administration, which is all right. But I think the issue of the credentials of the president are not at issue in the deliberations now.
Okay.
What we're saying is that when we have independent offices, let them actually be independent. That is the problem that even IEBC is facing, and we shall go into that in a short while.
Yes.
Today, I have seen, and even Mheshimiwa here has talked about and advised KRA, and I want to imagine pleasantly so that that he can actually avail himself to advise KRA. But I think KRA and other institutions need to be left to do their statutory duties. Because to this day, I have seen and heard politicians sing at the crest of their voices on the issue of taxes, and have not heard from KRA speaking on the same issue. What we are saying is that, yes, paying of taxes must be done with certainty just as much as the sun rises from the east and sets in the west. And we keen that everybody pays the same. But let us have these institutions play their roles. And that's why we're saying that when other institutions such as the DCI failed Kenyans by failing in those offices, when institutions such as the DPP, the ODPP, fails Kenyans in such a manner as availing itself to manipulation, it is actually going against even the very principles and the ethos of governance and the principles of good governance as contained in Article 10, Sub-Article 2 of the Constitution. In fact, let's say that if the DPP, as he has opined himself, that yes, there was political influence in the prosecution of the matters, then actually he's spitting on Article 232 of the Constitution. As a matter of fact, I think we need to come to a point where we sort out the messes in governance in this country. And some of the things that Mheshimiwa is speaking to are some of the things that Kenyans must not allow. It's not about, for example, he has said that Parliament is preparing to impeach other persons, which means that there is intention already, yet even an inquiry has not been done on whatever persons those are and what is at issue. We must be at a position where political witch hunt and ill interest must not be the motivation, must not be the turbine that turns the Parliament or whatever institution. And that is why I took firm faith in President William Ruto when he said that he will lead this government or his administration under the rule of law. Then let that rule of law be the guiding light. Just the same way the wise men from the east were guided by the star to go where the newborn was. Right. Let that be the leading light.
I mean, just have Prof, 1 minute.
One minute, and then we need to take a break, and Hesh will come back with your response.
I think emotions aside, you have to understand that Ngundi Kenyans were taken to court on tax issues, they were taken to court on criminal issues, which they should never have been taken, given that the DPP has confessed there was no evidence. That's an indictment on that office. Number two, the Kenyans now have to worry. How many Kenyans are sitting in jail waiting a trial on a matter that they should never have been arrested on? Because what we are seeing here is incredible incompetence. So making the Kenyans lose faith in that office, for me, in that alone, is really a violation of every tenet of governance.
All right, so we take a break. Mahesh, I'll give you an opportunity to respond on the other side. My question to you would be, how does shouting former President Uhuru Kenyatta's family's name from the rooftops help us collect taxes? And also, gentlemen, when you're saying, talking of witch hunts, because we've talked about witch hunting, we'll come back to that. But gentlemen, also think about this for the other side of the break. Can you really say that the DCI is not the one who bungled things under the previous administration, when if you look at the Rigathi Gachagua case, his assets being unfrozen, the 200 million shillings, the Assets Recovery Agency supported the unfreezing, saying they were relying on erroneous information from the investigative agencies. Hata tujaguza hii topic, but we'll come back even with this, because is it you who raised it, Mahesh? Raila's movement signals, and can we take it on the screen as we take the break? Signals end of Azimio.
Centum Real Estate brings to you 265 Elma 1 Apartments, the newest and most stylish development in Kasarani. Pay a deposit of 250,000 Kenya shillings and the balance in flexible installments or mortgage finance.
Yo, Butru Seke, the sharp god up in the mix. You know what I'm saying? Interview, shout out to you, bro. Keep it locked. Hey.
Sauti yako ina sound vizuri kwenye masikio.
I like it. Come to the dance floor, babe.
Angie.
Leo tuna festa fe banga. Festa fe banga. Another banga. And it's just like an amazing mix.
I am happy today. Sin koma vitu nani lea. Oh yeah. Inaweka shida chini na tupa mikono juu. Banjuka tu.
No compromise, this the hottest combo.
Unistima, uninare. Mix on MTV. Don't touch that dial. Not yet. No, what?
What room has no doors or windows?
I think it's a staff room because it has more things occupied.
I think it's a leg because it doesn't have any openings.
And you're beautiful just the way you are.
So this is the sushi chef. So this is the sushi chef.
So this is the sushi chef. So this is the sushi chef. So this is the sushi chef. So this is the sushi chef.
He's action-packed and sister challenge. Looking dog for living large. Triple cloning. T-Rexing. Royal throne. Johnny Xing. You never know what's coming next. Cause it's Johnny.
Grow your biashara by accessing loans, investment options, convenient banking, network opportunities, and so much more. Njoo tukujenge. Visit any one of our 93 branches countrywide. Family Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
Kenya Utalii College is a premier UNWTO accredited hospitality and tourism training institution and a gateway to international careers. Apply now for competency-based diploma or certificate courses or short tailor-made courses.
Forever my love.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways. And Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure.
Claiming your assets is easy. Simply visit UFAA website www.ufaa.go.ke or dial *361# or visit Huduma Center near you.
All right, my panelists are already discussing the whole question of the proposed devolving of elections and whether it is a fool's errand or it could be a game changer in Kenya's electoral process. Can I take as your response your last comment that why is Uhuru then sponsoring Azimio rallies? And move us along, if you don't mind, Mahesh, to the topic.
Thank you, Orif. I think this country went through a revolution on 9th of August last year, where the mighty, the system, the deep state, failed to convince Kenyans that they can go their direction. And Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, and those guys have not accepted the fact that Kenyans moved wrong time ago, that Kenyans can be able to make an independent decision on how they want to be governed and how they want the issues they want to be addressed by their government. That happened 9th of August last year.
Okay.
And because it's through a shock up to now, why is it that 5 months after elections is the time Raila Odinga is coming to claim that elections were rigged? Why? It's because it was a huge shock that Kenyans can say no to those who are in power with money and who have held the system of this country for the last 60 years. So because of that, and of course, the renewed call for the Kenya Kwanza government in terms of payment of taxes, and we pay, you know, all manner of taxes which have not been paid in the past, then Uhuru Kenyatta get a bit rattled. And remember, we are also fixing coffee business, coffee sector of the Republic of Kenya. We are fixing milk business of the Republic of Kenya. Farmers must get their money as far as milk is concerned, as far as coffee is concerned, as far as tea is concerned. Who are the major business in terms of coffee, milk, and tea in this country? We know them. And when we are saying that, let Kenyans get their due. Let's remove all these brokers in between here. Who are these brokers in between here? That is where sponsoring of demonstrations is coming from.
Okay.
Because their businesses are getting disrupted. Remember, who was earning all this money of freezer? What did we do as Kenya Kwanza government when we came into office?
Are you talking about the milk freezers? Or?
No.
You're talking about the Fuliza.
Oh, Fuliza. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes.
You come from my place, so the language is different.
All these businesses which have been done by the people at the top to benefit themselves and their families, that is where the Kenya Kwanza government is saying, please, don't charge the very poor, the Bonda Rainda in my village, because he has borrowed you 500 bob. You want him to pay that 500 bob 3 times. Don't buy 1 kilo of coffee at 30 bob when you are selling 1 kilo of coffee at 230 Kenya shilling. Don't pay 1 kilo of milk 20 bob when you are selling that 1 kilo of milk at 100 and something Kenya shilling. So Kenya Kwanza government, remember we said we are going to work for the very poor at the bottom of the pyramid. These are the people, these are the Kenyans who have been held captive by Uhuru Kenyatta businesses, by Raila Odinga businesses, and we are saying we have to dismantle, we have to get Kenyans out of that, you know, the way they have been weaved into that system, which is milking their resources every single day.
Okay.
Everybody who is in that business will come out fighting. And that's why we can see there are demonstrations, and we are saying continue demonstrating, but the moment you destroy properties, the moment you destroy rights of Kenyans, then I'm sure the president will take very firm action.
All right.
This president is not Uhuru Kenyatta. This president is not Mwai Kibaki. Is William Ruto. And is firm and he mean business.
Okay, so nasema kutakuwa na handshake. Haya, speaking of demonstrations, now let me move us along tafadhali. All right, you raised this headline, Mhesh, the Standard front page, Raila's movement signals end of Azimio. Is that accurate, first of all, their interpretation? Opposition leader Raila Odinga has formed a caucus called Movement for Defense of Democracy, which echoes his well-known political trick of dumping and forming new alliances after every election cycle. Will it gain currency like those before it? I can see here those student leaders that were at Kibra on Sunday in their red berets. And as we look at this, tujibu pia hili swali, game changer or fool's errand, because another thing he unveiled is his demand for devolving the electoral process, as well as having political parties second members to the electoral agency. Professor Gitile Naituli.
Yes, I think devolving IMBC is probably the clever thing to do. Of course, there will be a middle ground, you know, the electoral college that Raila is proposing. And you know what surprised me is usually Raila has very good ideas in opposition, and when he has power, he doesn't implement them. You see, even if I were advising Kenya Kwanza also, they need to listen to Raila Odinga. Because if you listen to Mheshimiwa here carefully, you will understand that what the election was not about Ruto or Ruto's program. It was not about Raila and Raila's weaknesses. The election was a referendum on Uhuru Kenyatta. That's why they still continue bringing Uhuru Kenyatta into equation, because they understand the Central Kenyan's problem it was having with Uhuru Kenyatta. So, in devolving IBC, this is what I think need to be supported. I think that you can decentralize. You see, as it is right now, all you have to do in Bomas of Kenya, and I've talked to a lot of very senior politicians in this country and the senior members in the government, who are my friends. Actually, they all agree that all you have to do in the Bomas of Kenya during the tallying of presidential election is simply to announce the president. Okay? And get you announced, and then give your opponent the problem of going to the court. 14 days is not even enough to do anything by the court itself to find the truth. So you understand. So what I want to say, this is what the devolution is likely to do and look like. If, for example, you see, according to law right now, the polling station is the final authority. Okay? So you would make the tallying, the presidential tallying center within a sub-county, within that constituency, to end there. So that the constituency now submit its results, the result of the polling stations, to the county. And then the county submit to the National Tallying Center. This is what we have done in a county like, let's say, Nakuru, 11 constituencies. At the county tallying center, we have 11 entries. 11 is coming from the 11 sub-counties. At the National Tallying Center, then you have 47. So this idea of streaming from polling stations is cut short. Now this is what enables now the country and the court to do. If there is a problem with a sub-county, you can isolate that and recount. If there is a problem with the county, you can isolate that county and recount. So as it is right now, it's not possible for the court to do that. So the court, because the court must maintain peace. Okay? The court needs the country intact. The court usually will overrule you, even if it thinks you have issues, because it's not possible to find the truth. That's why you hear about all these servers now. Do you think the Kenyans don't know that? They do, but they're dishonest. Okay? They want to shortcut. Because you see, the Anderson government would have implemented that program easily, because they are the majority in the parliament. They didn't do it. They didn't even address it. So, for me, I think the Kenya Kwanza government would be advised to actually listen to what Raila is saying, because the next election, Uhuru may not be the subject of it. Okay? When I used to go at the campaign at home, people always told me Uhuru must go. They didn't even realize that Raila was a candidate. Uhuru may not be there in 2027 as a focus. So they need an electoral agency that all Kenyans trust and believe in. Now, about the political class selecting and posting candidates, I don't even see why that is so wrong, because there is no independent in the NBC. We never saw it in Keboito. We didn't see that independent with Hassan, because I remember Hassan calling Raila the perpetual loser. So meaning that he really did like the guy. We haven't seen it. We saw a division where 4 commissioners on their side and 3 were. So the independent in the NBC is fake. Now, because it's fake, the parties may very well get people with integrity, people with enough strength to withstand the political pressure. Because look, let's take it. There was political pressure in the last election, because that split was not a split. It was a split 3-4, because the Ruto told us these are handshake commissioners. I agree, but these also could very well be money commissioners, since Raila says they went to his house looking for money. So, because of that, I think when the parties, the style of YPPNG, got together, it's possible. Devolution, together with the parties nominating, because they can get very credible people, it may very well be the panacea.
Okay.
That is solving the structural problem. Now we have to go to the value problem, which I don't know how that can be addressed.
All right, Javas, I saw you disagreeing with something that Professor Gitile Naituli went.
I disagree with the Professor on a number of issues.
Okay.
As a matter of fact and even a matter of law. One, that it is not the duty and the responsibility of the courts to maintain peace in this country or any other. The work of the courts is to interpret the law. The issue of maintaining law and order is the duty of the police and its enforcement. What we know is that the courts, yes, they do not exist in a vacuum. And because the courts operate within a social and political system, then they must be alive to the facts that are political, social, and economic. And that is why their duty is to interpret the law as it is. The courts do not create the law from scratch. They do not hatch the law. It's Parliament that creates and fashions the law. Now, when it comes to the issue of devolving elections, I would opine this way. That technically, legally today, we have devolved the management of elections. And I say technically through the legal lenses, because when you read purposively and appreciate the import and weight of the Maina Kiai decision, then you realize that the determination, the issue of determining who has won and who has lost, after people have cast their ballot, and it has been verified as valid and counted, the declaration done there is final. The Maina Kiai decision has also been reinforced further by the Supreme Court decision in the Hassan Ali Joho and another versus Shahbal and two others, 2014 KLR. You realize that even the Supreme Court appreciates that the first point of determination of and calling the vote is at the polling station. And after that, we know that it moves to the constituency. The rest, we know very well that we do not have the counting of presidential results at the county level. The determination of and the tallying of results at the polling station is where actually the, the intention of the voter, the will of the people is determined, and the courts have settled that matter. The thing is this: if we just want to create constituency level, county level IBC offices, we may just want to call it that way. But as a matter of fact, once a returning officer, who is an IBC official, is doing his or her work, presiding and superintending the election there, then actually the will of the people is determined there. The other thing is this: if at all it's the question of devolving elections, how Raila is putting it. And
because he did say it should be modeled after the US Electoral College, yes.
But you see, let me ask you, we are likely to find ourselves even in very serious, dangerous, politically situations if at all we embrace that. And I remember that even at some point Raila Odinga was tinkering with the idea of the electoral votes being introduced as an idea within our election management system. If at all we were to embrace that, I can assure you, and I would want to use the analogy of the Hillary Clinton election and versus Trump. If that was to happen in Kenya today, and Raila Odinga was Hillary Clinton and then William Ruto was Trump in the circumstances of that election, that the popular vote is with Raila, and then the electoral vote is with President William Ruto, the question that Raila would have raised would be legitimacy. That where does the sovereign power and who are the sovereign people and what have they determined? And remember that even as he's arguing about the issue of legitimacy of this administration, erroneously so, he's talking about the will of the people, Article 1 of the Constitution. And if we find ourselves, for example, if we're to embrace the electoral college system, we would say that then, and fashioning around the American system, that all members of the constituencies, the 290, plus possibly the 47 senators, would constitute the electoral college or represent the same. Question would be, do these elected leaders represent the ultimate will of the sovereign? That would be a question that will have to be determined then. And in fact, we'll have endless battles in court concerning the same.
Okay.
Another thing is that with this idea of devolving elections that he even gave in his speech in Nigeria, Raila Odinga, of course, is cleverly moving the goalposts. You remember that even in the Kibra rally, he did not critically pay his attention to the whistleblower, the mythopoesis of the whistleblower as he had created in the Jacaranda rally. All these are goalposts that are shifting to play the political game. And like I was opining during the break, is that Raila's interest and scheme here is not even actually to alter the electoral system. The issue for Raila Odinga here in this moment, as he's playing his political games, is to craft a way that he can lead to a referendum that's agreeable to the people through a popular initiative. And that's the likely thing that he'll do after all these rallies across the country. And you remember that even with the president's memorandum the other day, Raila Odinga said that the president cannot initiate amendment of the constitution, as was the decision of the Supreme Court that dealt a death blow to the BBI. And so we are likely to see a push for amendment of the constitution through a popular initiative after all these Raila's political rallies are happening, because he wants to create some kind of political might. But as Lincoln said in his time, might does not make right. Right makes right, and actually should keep right.
A referendum on what?
No, basically Raila is pushing for amendment of the constitution, and the referendum would be on various issues. Like, for example, the issue of devolving elections. It cannot happen unless you cause amendment to the constitution, because when you look at the structure of running elections under Article 88 of the constitution, which is under the IEBC, when you look at the suggestion that, and when you talk about devolution, is transferring that power administratively from the national management of it to, for instance, if it's a question of the counties. But the question would be, and why I'm saying that there will be even a referendum on all these issues, recall that even the suggestions in the Supreme Court decision in the just concluded presidential petition, as well as some of the recommendations even by IEBC in the post-evaluation report, some of these changes that may want to improve or ameliorate the management of electoral system may have to come through amendment of the constitution.
Okay.
And that is what may happen. But you see, just like one of the panelists indicated, if at all this administration, President William Ruto, would acquiesce to a referendum, that referendum will not actually be primarily on the amendment of the constitution, but a referendum on his politics and his governance. And remember that that is what Raila Odinga did in 2005, the referendum. And it was a referendum on Mwai Kibaki, and you remember what happened in 2007, 2008. A referendum in this term of President William Ruto will be a referendum on his governance. And that's actually what Raila Odinga would want.
Right. James, please weigh in. When he was speaking in Nigeria, Raila Odinga spoke about different things. He talked about modeling the electoral system similar to what is currently there in the US. So what would it involve? Would we then have 47, I don't want to say IBCs because Prof. amesema independent toa, so electoral agencies, especially considering his proposal that political parties second members to these agencies. And then third, he also talked about if we cannot track the ballot, the vote, each vote electronically, then we might as well consider going fully manual.
I like answering questions directly. The question you posed, the theme of this discussion,
a game changer or
a fool's errand. And I want to plead with the erstwhile Raila Odinga, an enigma in Kenyan politics who's made tremendous contribution to the democratization of this nation, that he has embarked on a fool's errand, what we call an unruly horse. He surmounted an unruly horse from which he might not return. What is this obsession with changing yourself over and over again like you have absolutely no vision? On the one side, momentarily you look like you're the best thing that happened to Kenyans after sliced bread. And then one moment later, you are looking like you are so lost in the ocean. Kenyans have absolutely nothing they can think about you. I want to persuade him and the people who think around politics, around him, because I know he has a lot of them. 2017, the strategy around 2017 elections for Raila Odinga was, go to the elections, there's a possibility that you might not win. Either create a situation in which we go for a runoff, and then some things happen and so on and so forth. But if we go for a runoff, don't participate in the election. Okay? And in his thinking then, having read, I think, paragraph 292 of the Raila Odinga the judgment of 2013, where the court had said, if you do not go for election, then it means there is no election, because it's supposed to be between the one who's been declared winner and the first runners-up. What happens? Ekuru Okot gets into the middle and creates that other person with whom President Uhuru Kenyatta could have actually gone into an election with. And so Raila Odinga is left with a very difficult scenario, of course, which now forces him to get into the handshake. Okay? In 2022, Raila Amolo Odinga fails to do only one small thing. He refuses to deploy agents to the polling stations. Okay? And as a result of which, we don't know what happened. He can't tell himself because his agents were not there. But before that election, I was telling some of these guys that, you know, we have 46,000 plus polling stations. And if you don't have agents in the polling stations, there's a possibility you can lose only 5 votes in a polling station. Multiply it with the number of polling stations, and you can easily see you could lose the 200,000 votes that he lost. Okay? Kenyans have walked a long distance. IEBC and election laws have been argued in the courts for many years. And fortunately, this constitution has provided quite a lot of opportunity for Kenyans to get some democratic elections to be done. Now, we have gotten very serious gains from some of this litigation, including the decision that my colleague has cited, the Maina Kiai case, which makes the polling station the focal point for presidential elections. All you need to do is get your agents there. We are not interested in changing a result. If Raila Odinga did not win at the polling station, we are not interested in creating an IEBC that will declare Raila Odinga as president if he did not win. What we need is to be sure that what was cast as votes for the president in the polling station are actually the votes that are brought here to Bomas. Okay? But you must have your people there at the polling stations to ensure that the correct votes are counted. Now, this question of devolution of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is the foolishest proposal I have heard in all time. The US, where we have borrowed significantly our general system of administration from, is a continent. Some of the states there are bigger than Kenya, with serious economic wherewithal, very serious built institutions. In fact, the Constitution of the United States allows the states to create laws around which those elections are going to be conducted. Now, just imagine, if at the national level, this national parliament, constituting of both Senate and National Assembly, cannot guide us properly on how to conduct elections, what would happen if we left this, for instance, to the venerable county government of Nyamira, okay, to create laws on how to create our elections? What would happen is this: you get extremely interesting figures from every part of this country, and you would not be able to tell who became president. Our counties have not reached that level of maturity. So let us keep to the gains we have already acquired. And in my view, this parliament has a role now, considering the judgment of 2022 by the Supreme Court, to look at a very serious and simple thing. Okay? The results that have been brought to Bomas from the polling station, okay, are they the correct results for purposes of tallying, verifying, and announcement of presidential results?
Okay.
What I agree with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court stated it, the role of tallying, verifying, and announcing results should not be a preserve of the chairman of the IEBC. Because let's give Wafula Chebukati the benefit of the doubt. Suppose he was correct this time, all right? Eliminating the rest of the commissioners and doing it by himself, okay? What if next time the guy doesn't do it correct? So what Parliament needs to do, and urgently so now, is really not so much a question about who appoints IEBC commissioners, because you can get someone appointed who you think is your friend, But something happens along the way. Friends disagree on many other things all the time. What you need to do is ensure that you have a corporate structure called ABC, clarify on what it means, on what Article 138.3c as read together with Article 138.10. Clarify on what it means when it says, when the framers of the Constitution said that to tally, the commission to tally, verify, and announce results, and then clarify it side by side with the requirement that the chairman of the commission shall declare results. Okay? Once you do that, then what we expect to happen is that all those things that you have displayed in the portal and the protocols about how they will be collated, verified, and tallied, and then eventually declared are a corporate process that is not available for abuse. And then most importantly, Parliament having created good protocols on how the results pathway right from the polling station appears at the portal. Go down and say how that image should look like, all right? Parliament can legislate on what it thinks is important for that result to come to Bomas. And then once that happens, okay, now extend the period for the question of interrogation of that process should someone have a dispute.
All right.
Take it to 30 days so that someone can go and look at it and say, look, here there was a problem, here there was a problem, and then now the court is able to say, well, these issues actually do affect the result or they do not. So that everybody is happy about what that process is. But don't tell us that we go again and start afresh with the amount of work that has already been put in.
Right.
That would be unacceptable.
Finally,
and in fact,
last word.
The 14 days needs a referendum.
Yes.
But you see what Raila Odinga should be focusing on when you look at Article 86 of the Constitution, if at all it was to be useful, is to see how, for example, the rights of persons with disability, for instance, look at the people who are visually impaired. How can they independently, freely cast their vote without interference or an intermediary? Is that the thing that we should be pursuing? Right now, all this is deodorized cut sheet.
I think...
you guys, today you decided you're not missing your words? Yeah. All right.
I think there are, or if there are mistakes which we cannot make, there are some mistakes which were done with our current constitution. For instance, we devolved the health function, and you can see how we have serious mess as far as our dispensaries, our hospitals across the Republic of Kenya, because that is a devolved function. And trying to get it back to the national government is another serious process. We cannot, again, have such a mistake where we are going to devolve the IBC to different counties. It's very simple, and this is what I'm requesting. Every politician, whether you are running for MCA or for member of parliament or for president, when you are defeated, please accept the results, go home, wait for another 5 years, improve on the mistake which you made, you are likely to win in the next general election. I have lost elections in the past. I won in 2022. Raila Odinga has lost elections from 1997. No, from 1992 all the way to now. Those are about 40 years. Jameni, I don't think you can do one thing using the same formula and you expect different results. This has been the style of Raila, trying to force himself back to power, to government. It is not going to happen. We in Kenya Kwanza, we are not going to allow Raila Odinga to come to Kenya Kwanza government. Let Raila Odinga play his role of an opposition. Let him check the government. Let him check oversight, whatever the government is doing. But he is not going to get anything, you know, as far as the government of Kenya Kwanza is concerned. And this is a crazy idea of devolving IBC. We cannot allow such in Parliament. And it is good that we have the majority in Parliament. So you can be sure, or it will not happen. It will not happen. Let him prepare for the next general elections, which is in 2027. And of course, if you are defeated when you are supported by the sitting government, do you think he has any chances of winning in 2027?
All right.
It is impossible.
Okay.
So,
but who knows? Who knows with the future? Like I think James said, even the devil cannot know the mind of a man.
Or if I participated in elections. The only way to do is to be sure that you get it right at the polling station.
All right, and I need to end the conversation here.
And that's it. And in that room of polling station, how many agents do we have? How many poll observers do we have?
All right.
How many media guys do we have in a polling station?
Okay.
You know, governor as an agent, MP as an agent.
Gentlemen, Javas, please. What are to fed? All right, that's it for AM Live. The question we were asking was this. Disappeared. The question we were asking was this: devolving elections, game changer or fool's errand? James has said Raila is lost in the ocean. Javas made a cut reference. I'll just fan the back of my head because today's was a hot show. Thank you so much. Very North Member of Parliament, Geoffrey Ruko, Professor Gitile Naituli, governance expert, James Mamboleo, advocate, Javas Bigambo, lawyer, governance specialist. I went to your Twitter. I saw very many titles. I just picked one. That's it. Have yourself a good morning.
Presenting the new Harpic Bathroom Cleaner. Compared to ordinary detergents, its thick formulation gives you superior cleaning and kills 99.9% of germs and viruses all around the bathroom. Blue
for the toilet
and red
for the bathroom.
Pata taarifa teke na e-paper. Stay in the know on the go. Getting the full story bilangori. To sign up, choose your preferred subscription. Use the promo code SUBZ22 to get 20% off and pay. Get your favorite newspaper and enjoy the truth anywhere, anytime. For inquiries, email epaper@ke.nationmedia.com or call 0790 111 111. Subscribe today and get your taarifa teke.
I'm in Kenya's North Rift region of Uasin Gishu County, which is regarded as Kenya's food basket. Many farmers here know little about the science cited as genetically modified organism, but are concerned about what impact rolling out the science could have on food production.
In just about 40 years' time, the city of Dodoma has changed from being just a small town in the middle of nowhere to becoming Tanzania's capital. But how has this change affected the value and demand for land and housing?
This used to be an unusable swampland, but these women have turned all that around. They converted 25 acres of inland valley swamp to a thriving farmland. They primarily grow rice, vegetables, and legumes. It's labor-intensive.
Grow your biashara by accessing loans, investment options, convenient banking, network opportunities, and so much more. Njoo tukujenge. Visit any one of our 93 branches countrywide. Family Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
Daring Abroad makes me dare. It's the only show of its kind in the world. And now, it's bigger.
And even more entertaining and informative than before.
Hapa kunaitwa Kakoe na inatubaba sana.
From London to Jersey Island.
Goma in the Democratic Republic of Congo to the scenic features of Uganda, the Pearl of Africa.
And many more places abroad and at home.
I watch Daring Abroad. I like the stories which people bring.
Daring Abroad every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. with repeats every Sunday at 1:30 p.m. on NTV.
February is the month of love, and this February we've got an amazing activity for all the singles who are ready to mingle. It's going to be an afternoon full of good vibes and awesome activities from speed dating, sip and paint, charades, karaoke, and so much more. Get to enjoy live music from Hard the Band. Catch the Season 3 Episode 1 live recording of the Joyride